You are at Lake Rant, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons, $10 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Gary Always, who says, rant about California. I think you talked about it briefly in the Digi Daily videos, but who remembers those? Other than occasionally taking a jab at the obvious things like it being too expensive and the people being assholes, I don't know how you really feel about the state you came from. Do you feel any connection to it at all, and does it mean anything to you that you were born in the same city as such awesome people as Mark Hamill, Bruce Lee, and Daveed Diggs? Did not know that, but cool. So the city he's referring to, of course, is Oakland, and in looking up Mark Hamill to confirm that, I found out his mom was named Virginia. But I feel very little connection to California. I don't have any memories of actually living there. We moved to Virginia when I was 3, so I mostly remember living in Virginia and, brief stints in other places. But in spite of that, there's probably a lot more California in the way I act than I would realize, since my dad is from California and is very, very much a California boy. He's the kind of guy who will get excited if he finds out somebody else is from the same place he's from. Granted, he's from San Jose, I think. So yeah, he's from the Bay Area. I am from, was born in L.A., but, well, not L.A., I was born in Oakland, near L.A., or is it near San Francisco? It's not near L.A. Oakland is near San Francisco, right? I don't even know my way around California. But I recently took this test that was meant to basically guess your dialect, like where do people talk like you. May took it, pretty much said you're probably from the north. I took this test and it said that you could be from Virginia, but most of the people who talk this way are from California. And I thought, well, maybe I talk like a Californian more than I realize, thanks to my dad. So I'm sure there's lots of cultural elements of how it is there, how people act, how people feel, that I was more affected by than I would be had I, no connection to the state at all. But as for my actual perception of the state, I mean, going to LA various times, and, it's hard to talk about, I've been to various cities. So I went to Silicon Valley for Crunchyroll Expo, and Silicon Valley is basically literally a valley just full of, office buildings. It's just a gigantic space of nothing but places where tech people work, essentially, and live. So that was interesting. It's a pretty town, but it's not very inviting. LA is a nightmare. LA is a giant grid of same-looking streets and buildings. When I fly over LA, it gives me anxiety. Just seeing how it just goes on forever of the same fucking thing, the same grid pattern forever. It's freaky, and obviously the reason why the traffic is so fucking terrible. But the whole layout of LA bothers me. Huntington Beach, down where my parents are, is very nice. It's beautiful, in fact. It's a little bit ritzier of an area. It would be a nice, quiet place to retire, as I'm sure it was for my granddad. LA itself is a hellhole. It's very dirty. There are massive encampments of homeless people everywhere, and just wandering around. It's a depressing place. It's a place that makes you feel like, wow, humanity failed. San Francisco is apparently even worse, going by the footage I've seen of that. San Francisco is it looks scary. It looks like a post-apocalypse movie. It's like the people of a post-apocalypse movie were transported into just a nice-looking city. So you're walking around with this sense of cognitive dissonance of, this place looks fancy, but I can't help but notice that it's a shithole and there's people doing heroin on the corners everywhere. That's just from what I've seen of footage of people just, walking around the city at night. But those are, the infamous California cities. Obviously, down in the south, it's very different. In the north, it's very different. It's really that midsection of California that most people kind of fixate on. But it really is another whole culture from the rest of the United States in a lot of ways. I mean, like, here in Virginia, people smoke. In LA, they don't. They do not smoke cigarettes in LA. You get looked at funny. You get asked to leave premises that you're smoking on. But then meanwhile, marijuana smoking is now everywhere because it's very easily available. People are smoking all the time. It's just interesting all the little like cultural shifts. Some of them positive, some of them negative that have happened in California that have not happened anywhere else. It's the taxes on there's no, is it that there's no sales tax but everything's more expensive? Is that what it is in California? Everything's expensive. Everything's very expensive. I mean, you said that's an obvious thing, that everything's expensive and people are assholes, but it's very true. I mean, it's one of the more noteworthy things. The architecture there is very interesting. There's lots of houses made out of like clay and shit, or just built in the style, fresco style. Is that what it's called? Fresco style buildings. There's parts of town that are really nice to look at. It's a lot less nauseating to be on the ground than it is to look at it from the sky, where it literally looks like an endless grid stretching into forever. It doesn't quite feel like that when you're actually on the ground. And there's tons of cool stuff in LA, obviously. Like, my perception of cities was very warped by knowing about LA and New York and Tokyo, because those cities are on like a completely different level. The idea that there's like boutiques and stuff, or just small stores that could open and thrive in a place where, even though the rent may be expensive, there's enough people in that town who'd be interested in this place that something like that can exist. There are things like that in the downtowns of other cities, but it's really like, LA being as it is, just this unbelievably sprawling fucking metropolis that goes on forever in all directions, essentially contains everything within it. And it's kind of funny, too, because LA is treated as this super area, even though there's really just, like, there's the city and then there's all these other cities. But they're treated as one thing, and therefore people are expected to go all the way across this city in a way that you're not really expected to in smaller cities, And I kind of know about it because I live in Virginia Beach, which is a huge, sprawling city, just not dense. But that expectation that you would go all the way across town for something does exist here. It's just not difficult to get across town, whereas in LA, it's a nightmare. So I would say it's culturally relatable enough to me that if I was going to live in a place like Huntington Beach, I think I'd be very happy there. But, especially because the weather is beautiful all year round. But other than that, I don't think it's so different from where I'm from that it's like this radical shift, except for in like the law, in like the legality of things, the cost of things. Virginia is a very inexpensive place to live. It's a very inexpensive place to buy cigarettes. Not that I'm smoking anymore, but it's just like, it's got. If it weren't for the weed, like if you could smoke weed here like legally, it would be I would not even think of California. I wouldn't even pine for such a thing. But that's the one thing they have over us, and we need to get it sorted out.